At 2:15 a.m., my wife texted me from a nightclub, "If you don't like it, break up with me." I didn't argue. I just sent one photo, and minutes later, she was standing at our door in shock. My name is Harvey Blake, and I'm a mechanical engineer who moonlights as a bartender for the DEA task force. Yeah, you heard that right. While my wife Erin thought I was just slinging drinks at Murphy's bar downtown, I was actually tracking narcotics shipments and building cases against dealers. The irony wasn't lost on me that she was texting from the very nightclub where her boyfriend Zane Carter ran his operation. Let me back up. Erin Blake, pharmaceutical sales rep, mother of two, and apparently expert at living double lives. For months, she'd been pulling the girls' night out routine, coming home at ungodly hours smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. Her phone became surgically attached to her hand, and suddenly she had more work emergencies than a trauma surgeon. I'm not stupid. I've been married to this woman for 15 years. I know the difference between working late and working someone else. But here's what Erin didn't know. My bartending gig at Murphy's put me right in the middle of the downtown scene, including Club Nexus, where she'd been spending her evenings. That night, when her text came through with all the subtlety of a brick through a window, I was ready. See, Zane Carter wasn't just some gym rat boyfriend. He was a logistics software administrator who'd been manipulating tracking data for a major distribution network, and I had months of evidence sitting in my laptop. I opened my files, selected the clearest mugshot from his arrest warrant, and hit send. No message, no explanation. Just Zane's face staring back from a federal booking photo, complete with case number and charges. My phone started ringing immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. By the fourth call, I could hear a car door slamming outside. Erin burst through our front door like she was being chased by demons. Her makeup was smeared, her designer dress wrinkled, and her hands were shaking as she held up her phone. "Harvey, what the hell is this?" I was sitting at our kitchen table, laptop open, coffee getting cold. I looked up at her with the same expression I'd wear if she'd asked me about the weather. "That's your boyfriend's arrest warrant. Federal charges, narcotics trafficking, money laundering, racketeering. Should I continue?" The color drained from her face. "You're lying." "Am I?" I turned the laptop toward her. The screen showed a detailed DEA file with Zane's photo, fingerprints, and a list of charges that would put him away for 25 to life. Turns out, being a bartender is excellent cover for someone who wants to eavesdrop on criminal conspiracies. Erin sank into the chair across from me. "Your DEA?" "Task force. Part-time. Pays better than you'd think." I closed the laptop. "The question is, how deep are you in this mess?" "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out a manila folder and spread its contents across the table. Bank statements, photographs, phone records, shipping manifests. Joint account at First National. Deposits totaling $47,000 over 6 months. Cash, always under $10,000 to avoid federal reporting requirements. Your signature on every deposit slip. Her phone buzzed, then again. The display lit up with text after text, all from Zane. I could see the panic in his messages even from across the table. "He knows I sent that photo," I said. "He knows his operation is blown. And right about now, he's wondering how much you told me." Erin's hands were trembling. "Harvey, I swear I didn't know about any drugs or money laundering. I thought he was just successful." "Successful at what? He owns a gym that loses money every month and drives a $90,000 car." I leaned back in my chair. "But don't worry, I'm going to give you a chance to fix this." "What do you mean?" "Tomorrow morning, you're going to call Detective Baines at the federal building. You're going to tell him everything you know about Zane's operation, and you're going to agree to wear a wire." The look on her face was priceless. "You want me to be an informant?" "I want you to save yourself from a RICO conviction, because right now, you're not just an unfaithful wife. You're an accessory to federal crimes." Outside, a car engine revved and tires squealed. Zane's black Mustang tore down our quiet suburban street like he was fleeing a crime scene, which technically he was. Erin stared at the scattered evidence on our kitchen table. "How long have you known?" "About the affair? 3 months. About the money laundering? 6 weeks. About tonight specifically?" I checked my watch. "About 4 hours. I've been tracking his phone since Tuesday." "You've been tracking his phone?" "Erin, I'm a federal informant with access to surveillance equipment. Did you really think I wouldn't notice my wife was sleeping with a drug dealer?" Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Zane's name lit up the screen, and I could see the desperation in his repeated attempts to reach her. "Answer it," I said. "What?" "Answer the phone. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what your boyfriend has to say." With shaking fingers, she accepted the call and tapped the speaker button. Erin. Jesus Christ, where are you? We need to talk. Now. I'm at home. Does Harvey know anything? About us, about the business, anything? I gestured for her to continue. No, she lied. He doesn't know anything. Good. Listen, we need to move the money tonight. All of it. There's been a leak somewhere and the feds are sniffing around. Meet me at the warehouse in an hour. I was already writing notes, recording every word. This was better than Christmas morning. Zane, I can't. It's almost 3 a.m. Erin, they have my photo. Someone sent my fucking mugshot to your phone. If they know about me, they know about the accounts. We need to clean house now or we're both going to prison. The call ended. Erin stared at the phone like it might explode. Well, I said, that was illuminating. Sounds like your boyfriend wants you to help him move evidence. That's called obstruction of justice. Federal crime, 5 to 10 years. Harvey, please, I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen. And now you have a choice. You can go to that warehouse and become a fugitive, or you can help me put him away and maybe salvage what's left of your life. I stood up and walked to the kitchen window. Zane's car was parked at the end of our street, engine running. He was waiting for her. He's out there, I said. Probably armed, definitely desperate, and absolutely certain that his operation is blown. If you get in that car with him, I can't protect you. Protect me? You're the one who sent that photo. I'm the one who's been building a case against a major drug distribution network. You just happened to be sleeping with my primary target. I turned back to face her. But I'm also your husband, and despite everything, I don't want to see you in federal prison. Erin looked at the evidence scattered across our table, then at her phone, then at the window where Zane's car waited in the darkness. What happens if I cooperate? Immunity deal. Testimony in exchange for dropped charges. You'll lose the money, obviously, and our marriage is over, but you'll be free. And if I don't, then you're an accessory to trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy. 25 years minimum. Our kids grow up visiting you in federal prison. Her phone buzzed with another text from Zane. Where are you? We need to go now. I watched my wife of 15 years weigh her options, the woman who'd shared my bed, raised my children, and apparently helped launder drug money for the past 6 months. Okay, she whispered. I'll do it. The next morning, Detective Ray Baines sat across from Erin in interview room 3 at the federal building. I watched through one-way glass as my wife signed her cooperation agreement and agreed to wear a wire for her final meeting with Zane. Baines was an old Army buddy who'd recruited me for the task force 2 years ago. He knew the whole story, the failing marriage, the suspicious bank deposits, the months of surveillance that had led us to Zane's operation. She's nervous, Baines said, joining me at the observation window. She should be. Carter's not stupid. If he suspects she's working with us, this could go bad quickly. On the other side of the glass, a technician was fitting Erin with a nearly invisible recording device. The plan was simple. She would meet Zane at Club Nexus, get him talking about the money transfers and drug shipments, and give us enough evidence to arrest everyone in his network. Harvey, Baines said, you know this is personal for you. If something goes wrong, it won't go wrong. I've been tracking this guy for months. I know his patterns, his contacts, his security measures. He trusts Erin completely. Trusted. Past tense. After last night, he's paranoid. I had to admit Baines was right. Zane had called Erin 6 more times before dawn, each conversation more frantic than the last. He was convinced someone in his organization had turned informant, but he hadn't yet suspected his girlfriend's husband. The irony was beautiful. For months, Zane had been bragging to Erin about his foolproof operation, how he used legitimate shipping companies to move product, how his gym was the perfect front for money laundering, how his software access let him manipulate tracking data to hide shipments from law enforcement. He'd told her everything, thinking he was impressing her with his criminal genius. What he'd actually done was build our entire case for us. She's ready, the technician announced. Erin emerged from the interview room looking pale but determined. The recording device was completely hidden, and she'd been coached on how to guide the conversation toward specific topics we needed for the prosecution. Remember, Baines told her, we need him to admit to specific shipments, specific amounts of money, and specific dates. The more details he gives you, the stronger our case becomes. What if he doesn't want to talk about business? He will, I said. He's scared. Scared people make mistakes. And Zane Carter has been making mistakes for months. I handed her a small piece of paper. If things go bad, if you feel unsafe at any point, send this text to my number. We'll have a team inside the club in under 2 minutes. She looked at the paper. Need aspirin. Aspirin? Code word. Simple, innocent, something you might actually text your husband from a nightclub. At 9 p.m., Erin walked into Club Nexus wearing a black dress and enough nervous energy to power the building. I was already there. Behind the bar, just another employee serving overpriced drinks to underdressed 20-somethings. Zane arrived 10 minutes later, and I could see the stress written across his face. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by the paranoid glances of someone who knew the walls were closing in. They found a corner booth, away from the main crowd, but well within range of Erin's recording equipment. I mixed drinks and watched their conversation unfold on the small monitor hidden behind the bar. "Told you we should have moved that money weeks ago," Zane was saying. "Now the accounts are frozen, and we can't touch any of it." Perfect. He was already talking about the money laundering operation. "How much did we lose?" Erin asked, playing her part perfectly. "Everything in the First National accounts, about 60 grand. But that's not the worst part. They've got shipping records, bank transfers, everything. Someone's been feeding them information for months." I smiled as I poured a martini for a customer. He was right about that. "Who do you think it is?" "Has to be someone close to the operation. Someone with access to the financial records and shipping manifests." He leaned closer to her. "Erin, I need you to think. Have you told anyone about us, about the money, anything at all?" "Of course not. You told me to keep it secret." "What about Harvey? Does he suspect anything?" This was the moment of truth. If Erin hesitated, if she showed any sign of deception, Zane would know something was wrong. "Harvey's clueless," she said smoothly. "He thinks I'm having a midlife crisis, buying expensive clothes, going out more. He has no idea about us or the money." Zane relaxed slightly. "Good, because if the feds are building a case, they'll be looking at everyone connected to the operation, including you." "What do you mean?" "Your name is on those bank accounts, Erin. Your signature is on deposit slips for money that came from drug sales. If they can prove you knew where that money came from, you're looking at serious federal time." I watched Erin's face on the monitor. She was doing better than I'd expected, staying calm despite hearing the full scope of her legal exposure. "But I didn't know," she said. "You told me it was profits from the gym and some investment deals. That's our story, and we stick to it. As long as we're consistent, they can't prove intent." He pulled out his phone and showed her something on the screen. "But we need to move the rest of the product tonight. Everything in the warehouse needs to disappear before they get a search warrant." Bingo. He was about to give us the location of his main stash house. "The warehouse on Industrial Boulevard?" "Yeah. We've got about 50 kilos of product and maybe 20 grand in cash. If we can move that tonight, we can start over somewhere else. 50 kilos. That was enough to put him away for life, and more than enough to justify the 6 months I'd spent building this case. Zane, I'm scared. What if they arrest us?" "They won't. We're going to be smart about this. Clean out the warehouse, close the accounts, and disappear for a while. I've got contacts in Mexico who can help us start fresh." Now he was talking about fleeing the country. The charges just kept piling up. "What about my kids?" For the first time, Zane looked annoyed. "What about them? You think Harvey's going to let you take them anyway, after you've been cheating on him for 6 months?" "I haven't decided what I'm doing about Harvey." "Well, you better decide fast, because after tonight, there's no going back. Either you're with me, or you're on your own." I could see Erin struggling with the weight of the conversation. This wasn't just about recording evidence anymore. Zane was asking her to abandon her children and flee the country with him. "I need to think about it," she said. "There's nothing to think about. We move the product tonight, transfer what money we can access, and we're gone by morning. It's that simple." "And if I say no?" Zane's expression hardened. "Then you're a liability, and I don't leave liabilities behind." That sounded like a threat. I signaled to the backup team positioned around the club. If Zane was getting violent, we needed to be ready to move. But Erin kept her composure. "Okay, I'm in. What do you need me to do?" "Meet me at the warehouse at midnight. Bring anything you can't leave behind because we're not coming back." They talked for another 20 minutes, with Zane providing details about shipping routes, supplier contacts, and distribution methods. By the time they left the club, we had enough evidence to dismantle his entire network. I watched them walk to the parking lot through the club's security cameras. Zane kissed her goodbye and drove away in his Mustang. Erin sat in her car for a full minute before starting the engine. My phone buzzed with a text. "It's done. He wants me to meet him at midnight." I typed back, "You did great. Come to the federal building. We need to plan the arrest." An hour later, we were back in the interview room, listening to the recording and planning our next move. Zane had given us everything we needed: the location of his stash house, details about his distribution network, and enough evidence to charge him with trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy. We hit the warehouse at 11:45, Baines said, 15 minutes before he expects to meet Erin. Full tactical team, search warrants for the building and his residence. What about the other locations he mentioned? Simultaneous raids. We'll take down the whole network at once. I looked at Erin, who was staring at the table. You okay? He threatened me, didn't he? At the end, when he said he doesn't leave liabilities behind. Yeah, he did. So even if I had chosen to run with him, I wouldn't have been safe. Probably not. Guys like Zane don't trust anyone completely. Eventually, he would have seen you as a risk. She nodded slowly. I guess I never really knew him at all. You knew the version of him he wanted you to see. The successful businessman, the charming boyfriend, the guy who could give you excitement your marriage was missing. I leaned forward. But that was all an act. The real Zane Carter is a drug dealer who just threatened to kill you if you didn't help him flee the country. Harvey? Yeah? I'm sorry for all of this. For the affair, for the money, for putting our family at risk. It was the first genuine apology she'd offered, and it caught me off guard. We'll deal with that later. Right now, let's focus on putting your boyfriend in federal prison. At 11:44 p.m., tactical teams hit 3 locations simultaneously. The warehouse on Industrial Boulevard, Zane's apartment, and a storage unit he'd rented under a false name. They found exactly what he'd promised Erin: 50 kilos of cocaine, $23,000 in cash, and enough shipping records to trace his operation back 2 years. Zane was arrested at the warehouse, caught in the act of loading drugs into a rental truck. His face, when he realized he'd been set up, was captured on body camera footage that would later become evidence in his trial. The booking photo they took that night showed a very different man from the confident gym owner who'd been seducing my wife. This Zane looked scared, defeated, and suddenly very aware that his criminal empire had collapsed around him. But we weren't done yet. Zane's arrest made the morning news. Channel 7 ran the story with his mugshot prominently displayed, local gym owner arrested in federal drug bust. The reporter mentioned the seizure of 50 kilograms of cocaine and assets worth over $200,000. I was eating breakfast with our kids, Harper and Jude, when Erin's phone started ringing. It was her friend Maggie, probably calling to gossip about the news story. Mom, who's calling so early? Harper asked. Just work stuff, honey. Eat your cereal. But I could see Erin's hands shaking as she declined the call. Maggie had been her closest friend for years, and she was also the only person who knew about the affair. If Maggie had seen the news... The phone rang again immediately. This time it was a number Erin didn't recognize. Answer it, I said quietly. She looked at me with panic in her eyes, but accepted the call. Erin Blake, this is Detective Morrison with the Financial Crimes Unit. We need to speak with you about accounts you held jointly with Zane Carter. Can you come to the federal building this morning? Yes, of course. What time? How about 10 o'clock? And Mrs. Blake, bring your attorney. The call ended, and Erin stared at her phone like it had just delivered a death sentence. Kids, finish your breakfast and get ready for school, I said. Your mom and I need to talk. Once Harper and Jude were upstairs, Erin turned to me with tears in her eyes. They want me to bring an attorney. That means they're going to arrest me, doesn't it? Not necessarily. You're cooperating with the investigation, but they need to formally interview you about the money laundering charges. What if they don't believe I didn't know about the drugs? Then you tell them the truth. You thought Zane was a successful businessman. You had no knowledge of his criminal activities. You believed the money in your joint accounts came from legitimate sources. But will they believe that? I poured myself another cup of coffee and considered the question. Honestly, probably not entirely. But with your cooperation and testimony, they'll offer you a plea deal. Probation, maybe some community service, but no prison time. Erin's phone buzzed with a text from Maggie. OMG, did you see the news? Call me ASAP. You need to talk to her, I said. What am I supposed to say? The truth. Zane fooled you, just like he fooled a lot of people. You had no idea he was involved in drug trafficking. She knows about the affair, Harvey. She's known for months. Then she's probably putting 2 and 2 together right now. Better to control the narrative than let her imagination run wild. Erin called Maggie back while I cleaned up the breakfast dishes. I could hear both sides of the conversation from the kitchen. Erin! Oh my God. I just saw the news about Zane. Please tell me you weren't involved in any of that drug stuff. Of course not. I had no idea what he was really doing. But you were dating him. You had to have seen something suspicious. Maggie, I thought he was just successful. He owned a gym, he had nice cars, he always had money. I never questioned where it came from. What about Harvey? Does he know about you and Zane? I stopped washing dishes and listened more carefully. He found out last night. We're dealing with it. Dealing with it how? Is he going to divorce you? Probably. I don't know. Everything's a mess right now. Erin, you need to be careful. If the police think you knew about the drugs, you could be in serious trouble. I know. I'm meeting with them this morning. Do you have a lawyer? Harvey's arranging something. Actually, I wasn't. Erin would be using a public defender since our joint assets were likely to be frozen as part of the investigation, but I didn't correct her. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with Maggie offering support and advice that would have been helpful 6 months ago. By the time Erin hung up, she looked exhausted. She wants to come over later, to help me deal with everything. That's not a good idea. The fewer people who know the details of your cooperation agreement, the better. Harvey, I'm scared. You should be, but you made the right choice last night. Zane would have dragged you down with him if you tried to run. At 10 a.m., Erin sat in another interview room at the federal building, this time with a court-appointed attorney named David Chen. I watched from the observation room as Detective Morrison laid out the evidence against her. Bank records showing $47,000 in suspicious deposits, security footage of her making those deposits, phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between her and Zane over 6 months, credit card receipts from expensive restaurants and hotels. Mrs. Blake, Morrison said, help me understand how you could be in a relationship with Mr. Carter for 6 months and not know he was involved in drug trafficking. I thought he was successful. He told me the money came from his gym and some investment deals. Did you ever visit his gym? A few times. And what did you observe about the business? Erin hesitated. It wasn't very busy, but Zane said most of his income came from personal training and corporate contracts. Corporate contracts that generated enough cash to make deposits of $5,000 to $8,000 every few weeks? I didn't think about it that way. Morrison opened another folder. We've analyzed the financial records of Carter's gym. In the past year, it lost $23,000. The only way it stayed open was through cash injections that we now know came from drug sales. Erin's attorney leaned forward. Detective, my client has already agreed to cooperate with your investigation. She wore a wire, she provided evidence, and she's willing to testify. What exactly are you looking for here? I'm trying to determine whether Mrs. Blake was a victim of deception or an active participant in money laundering. She was deceived, I said, entering the room. And I can prove it. Morrison looked surprised. Agent Blake, you shouldn't be here. I'm here as her husband, not as a federal agent. I set a folder on the table. These are Erin's personal financial records. Credit card statements, bank records, spending patterns. Look at the timeline. I opened the folder and spread out the documents. 6 months ago, Erin's spending increased dramatically. Expensive clothes, jewelry, restaurants she'd never been to before. But look at the pattern of purchases. Morrison studied the papers. She was buying gifts, men's clothing, expensive watches, electronics. She was trying to impress him. She thought she was dating a successful businessman, and she was spending her own money to keep up with his lifestyle. That doesn't prove she didn't know about the drugs. Actually, it does. Look at this. I pointed to a credit card statement from 3 months ago. She bought Zane a $500 watch for his birthday. If she knew he was making thousands of dollars a week from drug sales, why would she be buying him gifts with her pharmaceutical sales commission? Erin's attorney smiled. That's a good point. Someone who knew about illegal income wouldn't be spending their legitimate earnings on gifts for their partner. Morrison reviewed the evidence again. Okay, let's say she didn't know about the drugs. She still knowingly participated in structuring bank deposits to avoid federal reporting requirements. Because Zane told her it was for tax purposes, Erin said. He said keeping the deposits under $10,000 helped with his business accounting. And you believed that? I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep, not an accountant. I didn't know about federal banking regulations. Morrison closed the folder. Mrs. Blake, here's what we're prepared to offer. You plead guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. You testify truthfully in Mr. Carter's trial. In exchange, you receive 2 years probation and forfeit any claim to the money in the joint accounts. What about prison time? None, as long as you comply with the terms of your probation. Erin looked at her attorney, who nodded. It's a good deal. Take it. I accept. Morrison stood up. We'll have the paperwork ready this afternoon. Agent Blake, can I speak with you privately? We stepped into the hallway, leaving Erin with her attorney. That was some impressive detective work in there, Morrison said, using her spending patterns to prove she didn't know about the drug money. I've been watching her for months. I know how she thinks, how she spends money, how she makes decisions. She's guilty of adultery and poor judgment, but she's not a criminal mastermind. What happens now? Between you two, I mean. Divorce. She'll get supervised visitation with the kids, maybe joint custody eventually. I'll keep the house and primary custody. And the marriage. The marriage ended the night she chose to have an affair with a drug dealer. Everything since then has just been paperwork. That afternoon, Erin signed her plea agreement and cooperation deal. The local news ran another story. Gym owner's girlfriend cooperates with federal investigation. They didn't use her name, but in a town our size, everyone would know who they meant. My phone rang as we were leaving the federal building. It was my supervisor at the DEA. Harvey, great work on the Carter case. We're recommending you for a commendation. Thanks. What's the timeline for the trial? Carter's attorney is already talking about a plea deal. With your wife's testimony and the evidence you gathered, he's looking at 25 to life if this goes to trial. He'll probably take a deal for 15 years. And the rest of his network? We arrested 12 people yesterday, seized assets worth over $500,000. This was a major operation, and you shut it down. After I hung up, Erin and I sat in my truck in the federal building parking lot. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. What happens now? She finally asked. Now you go home, pack whatever you want to keep, and find somewhere else to live. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. What about the kids? They'll stay with me during the week. You can have them on weekends, supervised visits until your probation is complete. Harvey, I know you hate me right now, but I don't hate you, Erin. I just don't trust you, and I can't be married to someone I don't trust. Is there any chance we could work through this? Marriage counseling, therapy, anything? I started the truck and put it in drive. You had an affair with a drug dealer. You helped him launder money. You put our children at risk by bringing criminal activity into our lives. What exactly do you think we could work through? She didn't have an answer for that. 3 weeks later, the divorce papers were filed and the local gossip mill was running at full capacity. Maggie had apparently told everyone in her social circle about Erin's affair, and the story had grown more dramatic with each retelling. At Harper's soccer game, I could feel the stares and whispered conversations from other parents. Some were sympathetic. Everyone knew about Zane's arrest by now. Others were judgmental, treating our family like we were somehow contaminated by association. Dad, Harper said after her game, why is everyone looking at us weird? Because some people don't have enough excitement in their own lives, so they gossip about other families. Is it because of Mom? Harper was 13, old enough to understand that her parents were getting divorced, but still too young to know the full story. I decided to keep the details about the drug trafficking and money laundering private until she was older. Your mom made some poor choices, and now we're dealing with the consequences. But none of this is your fault or Jude's fault. Are we going to be okay? We're going to be fine. Better than fine. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I was reviewing financial documents for the divorce proceedings when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Maggie standing on my front porch. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Harvey, we need to talk. No, we don't. I know you're angry about Erin's affair, but you need to understand. I need to understand what exactly? Maggie shifted uncomfortably. She was unhappy. Your marriage had problems long before she met Zane. So that justifies adultery and money laundering? She didn't know about the money laundering. But you knew about the affair, for months, and you said nothing. It wasn't my place to tell you. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. Maggie, let me explain something. Your best friend was sleeping with a drug dealer and helping him launder money. She put my children at risk, she destroyed our family, and you enabled all of it by keeping her secrets. I was trying to be a good friend. Good friends don't help each other commit federal crimes. She's going to need support during the divorce proceedings, people who care about her. Then she should have thought about that before she decided to have an affair with a criminal. Maggie's expression hardened. You're being cruel, Harvey. She made mistakes, but she doesn't deserve to lose everything. She doesn't deserve to lose everything? What about what I lost? What my kids lost? You're not exactly innocent in all this. You were working undercover for months and never told her. Maybe if you'd been honest about your job. Are you seriously trying to blame me for her affair? I'm saying marriages have problems and people make mistakes. I looked at this woman who had been in my home dozens of times, who had eaten dinner at my table, who had watched my children grow up, and I realized she was just as delusional as Erin. Maggie, get off my property, and if I see you talking to my children about any of this, I'll file a restraining order. You can't keep her away from her friends forever. I'm not keeping her away from anyone, but I'm not going to let you or anyone else poison my kids against me to make Erin feel better about her choices. After Maggie left, I called my attorney to discuss adding a clause to the custody agreement about third-party contact with the children. I wanted to make sure Erin couldn't use her friends to manipulate Harper and Jude during the divorce process. The next morning brought more complications. My supervisor called with an update on Zane's case. Carter took a plea deal. 15 years, no parole for 10. But his attorney is claiming Erin was more involved than she's admitted. What kind of involvement? They're saying she knew about the drug trafficking and actively participated in recruiting customers through her pharmaceutical contacts. That's bullshit. We have recordings of their conversations. She was clearly surprised when she learned about the drugs. I know, but Carter's trying to reduce his sentence by implicating her. His attorney filed a motion claiming she used her access to pharmaceutical sales data to identify potential drug customers. Can they prove that? They don't have to prove it. They just have to create reasonable doubt about her cooperation agreement. If the judge thinks she lied about her level of involvement, her plea deal could be revoked. This was a problem. If Erin's plea deal was revoked, she could face the same charges as Zane, 25 years to life. Even if she was ultimately acquitted, the legal process would drag on for years and cost a fortune in attorney fees. I called Erin to let her know about Carter's new claims. "He's lying," she said immediately. "I never used my pharmaceutical contacts for anything related to his business." "I know he's lying, but we need to prove it. Do you still have your work records from the past year? Client lists, sales reports, anything that shows your professional activities?" "Most of it's on my work laptop." "Why?" "Because if we can show that your pharmaceutical clients don't overlap with Zane's drug customers, we can debunk his claims." "Harvey, what if they don't believe me? What if they think I was lying about everything?" "Then you go to prison for 25 years, and our kids grow up visiting you behind bars." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for almost a minute. "What do I need to do?" "Bring me everything you have. Work records, phone logs, client information, sales reports. Everything from the past year." "When?" "Tonight, after the kids go to bed." That evening, Erin arrived at our house with 2 boxes of documents and her work laptop. We spread everything across the dining room table and began cross-referencing her pharmaceutical clients with the list of people arrested in Zane's drug network. "Look at this," I said, pointing to her sales records. "Your client base is doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies. All legitimate medical professionals." "Right. And I never sold to individual consumers or cash customers." Zane's customers were gym members, college students, and young professionals. Completely different demographics. We worked for 3 hours, building a timeline of Erin's professional activities and comparing them to Zane's drug distribution network. There was no overlap. Her pharmaceutical sales had nothing to do with his criminal enterprise. "This should be enough to debunk Carter's claims," I said. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We still have to convince a federal judge that you're telling the truth." "Harvey, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Why are you helping me? After everything I did, why are you protecting me?" I looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, sitting at our dining room table surrounded by evidence of her double life. She looked older than her 35 years, worn down by stress and guilt and the weight of her poor decisions. "Because you're the mother of my children. And despite everything that's happened between us, I don't want Harper and Jude to grow up without their mom." "Even though I betrayed you?" "Even though you betrayed me. The marriage is over, Erin, but you're still their mother, and they need you in their lives. I don't deserve your help. No, you don't. But this isn't about what you deserve. It's about what's best for our kids." The next day, we presented our evidence to the prosecutor handling Zane's case. The documentation clearly showed that Erin's pharmaceutical work had no connection to his drug trafficking operation. "This should be sufficient to maintain Mrs. Blake's cooperation agreement," the prosecutor said. "Carter's claims appear to be a desperate attempt to reduce his own sentence." "So her plea deal stands?" "Yes. 2 years probation, forfeiture of the laundered money, and testimony at Carter's sentencing hearing." Relief washed over Erin's face. "Thank you, both of you." "Don't celebrate yet," I said. "You still have to testify, and Carter's attorney is going to try to make you look like a criminal mastermind." "What should I expect?" "Hostile questions about your relationship, your knowledge of his business activities, and your motivations for cooperating. They'll try to paint you as someone who turned on Carter to save herself." "Isn't that exactly what I did?" "Yes, but the reasons matter. You cooperated because you realized you'd been deceived and manipulated. You chose to do the right thing when you learned the truth. Will you be there, at the hearing? I'll be testifying too, as the agent who built the case against Carter." Will you tell them I was a good mother, before all this?" "If they ask, yes. Whatever else happened between us, you were always a good mother." For the first time in weeks, Erin smiled. It was a sad, tired smile, but it was genuine. "Thank you, Harvey, for everything." 3 days later, Zane Carter was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Erin testified for 2 hours, detailing how he had deceived her about his business activities and manipulated her into helping with the money laundering. I watched from the gallery as she answered the defense attorney's hostile questions with calm, honest responses. She admitted her mistakes, acknowledged her poor judgment, and took responsibility for her role in the money laundering scheme. When it was over, Zane was led away in handcuffs. He didn't look at Erin as he passed our table, but I could see the hatred in his eyes. He'd expected her to stand by him, to choose him over her family and her freedom. Instead, she'd chosen to tell the truth. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked Erin about her cooperation with law enforcement. "I made terrible mistakes," she said. "I trusted someone I shouldn't have trusted, and I put my family at risk. I'm grateful for the opportunity to make things right." "Do you regret your cooperation with federal agents?" "I regret the circumstances that made cooperation necessary, but I don't regret telling the truth." That evening, I helped Erin move her belongings out of our house and into a small apartment across town. The kids cried when she left, but we'd already established a visitation schedule that would let them see her regularly. "Dad," Jude asked after she was gone, "is Mom ever coming home?" "No, buddy. Mom and I are getting divorced, but she's going to have her own place and you'll get to stay with her on weekends." "Is it because she was dating that bad man?" "It's because Mom and I couldn't work out our problems, but we both love you and Harper very much, and that's never going to change." As I tucked my kids into bed that night, I reflected on everything that had happened over the past month. My marriage was over, my wife was a convicted felon, and my children were dealing with the trauma of their family falling apart. But Zane Carter was in prison, his drug network was dismantled, and the streets were a little bit safer. Erin had faced consequences for her actions, but avoided a life sentence. And my kids still had both their parents, even if we wouldn't be living together anymore. It wasn't the ending I'd hoped for when I first discovered the affair. But it was justice, and sometimes justice is the best revenge you can get. 6 months after Zane's sentencing, I thought the worst was behind us. Erin was living in her apartment, working a new job at a medical supply company, and seeing the kids every other weekend. The divorce was proceeding smoothly, and Harper and Jude were adjusting to their new reality. Then Jax Morrison got out on bail. Jax was Zane's former business partner, the muscle behind their operation. He'd been arrested in the same sweep that took down Zane, but his attorney had managed to get him released pending trial. The conditions of his bail required him to stay away from all known associates of the drug network. Apparently nobody had told him that included my ex-wife. I was at work when Erin called, hysterical. "Harvey, he was at my apartment, Jax Morrison. He was waiting by my car when I got home from work." "What did he want?" "Money. He says Zane owes him $60,000 from before the arrest, and since I was Zane's girlfriend, I'm responsible for the debt." "That's not how debts work." I tried to tell him that. He said if I don't pay, he'll hurt the kids. My blood ran cold. He threatened Harper and Jude? He knows where they go to school, Harvey. He knows our schedule, when I pick them up, everything. "Where are you now?" "At the police station. I came here right after he left." "Good. Stay there. I'm on my way." I called Detective Baines while driving to the police station. "Ray, we have a problem. Jax Morrison is threatening my family." "Morrison's out on bail. There's not much we can do unless he actually violates the terms." "He threatened to hurt my children if Erin doesn't pay him $60,000. "Can she prove that? Did anyone else hear the threat?" "It was just the two of them in her apartment parking lot. Then it's her word against his, and Morrison's attorney will claim she's lying to get his bail revoked. So what are my options? Officially, file a police report and request increased patrols around your house and the kids' school. Unofficially, watch your back and be ready for anything." I found Erin in an interview room at the police station, giving her statement to a detective I didn't recognize. She looked terrified. "Mrs. Blake, can you describe Mr. Morrison's exact words?" "He said Zane owed him money from their business partnership. He said since Zane was in prison, I was responsible for paying the debt. When I told him I didn't have that kind of money, he said he knew ways to motivate people." "Did he specifically threaten your children?" "He said he'd been watching my family. He knew my kids' names, their school, their after-school activities. He said accidents happen to children whose parents don't pay their debts." "But he didn't explicitly say he would hurt them?" "He didn't have to. The implication was clear." The detective finished taking Erin's statement and promised to forward it to the prosecutor's office. But as Baines had predicted, there wasn't much they could do with an implied threat and no witnesses. "What happens now?" Erin asked as we left the police station. "Now we take precautions. I'm going to pick up the kids from school and bring them to my house. You're going to stay somewhere else until Morrison's trial. I can't afford a hotel for months. Then stay with Maggie or one of your other friends. Harvey, I'm scared. What if he really does try to hurt the kids? He won't get the chance. I'm not letting them out of my sight until this is resolved. That evening, I explained the situation to Harper and Jude in terms they could understand. There's a bad man who might try to cause trouble for our family. So for the next few weeks, I'm going to pick you up from school myself, and we're going to be extra careful about where we go. Is it the same bad man who was friends with Mom's boyfriend? Harper asked. Yes, but he can't hurt us if we're smart and careful. Are we going to move away? No, honey, this is our home. We're not going anywhere. But privately, I was considering exactly that. Morrison was dangerous, desperate, and had nothing to lose. If he really believed Erin owed him money, he might do anything to collect it. I called my supervisor at the DEA to discuss protection options. Harvey, Morrison's not targeting you because of your work with us. This is a personal dispute arising from your wife's relationship with Carter. My ex-wife, and it doesn't matter why he's targeting us. He's threatening federal agents and their families. Former wife of a federal agent. The distinction matters for determining what resources we can provide. So you're saying we're on our own? I'm saying this falls under local law enforcement jurisdiction. A file for a restraining order, increase security at your house, and keep us informed of any developments. It was a bureaucratic brush-off, and we both knew it. That night, I installed new locks on all the doors and windows of my house. I set up a security camera system with motion detectors around the perimeter, and I moved my service weapon from the gun safe to my nightstand. For 3 days, everything was quiet. I picked up the kids from school, we stayed home in the evenings, and I watched the security monitors for any sign of unwanted visitors. On the 4th day, Morrison made his move. I was at work when the school called. Harper and Jude hadn't been picked up from after-school care, and the staff was concerned. What do you mean they weren't picked up? I arranged for my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to get them today. Sir, a man came to collect them about an hour ago. He said there was a family emergency and that you'd sent him. My heart stopped. What man? Did you get his name? He said he was their uncle. He had identification and seemed to know details about the children. I don't have a brother. Nobody was authorized to pick up my kids except Mrs. Patterson. Oh my God. Should we call the police? I'm calling them now. Lock down the school. Don't let anyone else leave the building. I called 911 while racing to my truck. This is Agent Harvey Blake with the DEA. I need to report a kidnapping. 2 children, ages 13 and 10, taken from Lincoln Elementary School approximately 1 hour ago. Sir, can you describe the suspect? Jax Morrison, white male, approximately 35 years old, 6 feet tall, brown hair, multiple tattoos on both arms. He's out on bail for federal drug trafficking charges. We're dispatching units to the school and issuing an Amber Alert. I called Baines next. Ray, Morrison took my kids. Jesus Christ. When? An hour ago. He posed as their uncle and convinced the school to release them. We'll find them, Harvey. Morrison's not smart enough to stay hidden for long. He's not trying to stay hidden. He's trying to force Erin to pay him. My phone rang as I was pulling into the school parking lot. Unknown number. Blake. Agent Blake? This is Jax Morrison. I think we need to talk. Where are my children? They're safe. For now. But their safety depends on your cooperation. What do you want? $60,000. Cash. The money your wife's boyfriend owes me. Erin doesn't have that kind of money. Then you better find it. Because if I don't get paid by tomorrow night, your kids are going to have a very unpleasant experience. Morrison, if you hurt my children, you'll what, arrest me? I'm already facing 25 to life. What's a couple more charges? Where do you want to meet? I'll call you tomorrow with instructions. And Blake, come alone. If I see any cops, your kids disappear forever. The line went dead. I stood in the school parking lot, surrounded by police cars and news vans, and realized that all my careful planning had been worthless. Morrison had outmaneuvered me by targeting the one thing I couldn't protect, my children's normal routine. Detective Baines approached me with a grim expression. We've got units searching the entire county. Morrison's car was spotted heading toward the industrial district. He's probably taking them to one of Zane's old safe houses, somewhere he knows won't be under surveillance. Harvey, we're going to find them. Not in time. He wants $60,000 by tomorrow night, or he's going to kill them. We don't negotiate with kidnappers. We do when they have my kids. That night, I liquidated every asset I could access. Savings accounts, retirement funds, stocks, bonds. By morning, I had $43,000 in cash. It wasn't enough, but it was everything I could raise on short notice. Erin arrived at my house early that morning, looking like she hadn't slept. Any word from Morrison? He's supposed to call today with instructions. Harvey, this is my fault. If I hadn't gotten involved with Zane, this isn't the time for guilt and apologies. Right now, we need to focus on getting the kids back safely. I have $8,000. It's everything I have, but maybe combined with what you've raised, it's still not enough. He wants $60,000. Then what do? We give him what we have and hope it's enough to keep him from hurting Harper and Jude. My phone rang at 2 p.m. Morrison again. You have the money? I have $51,000. It's everything we could raise. That's not what I asked for. It's what you're getting. Take it or leave it. You're not in a position to negotiate, Blake. Neither are you. You take this money and disappear, or you spend the rest of your life in federal prison for kidnapping the children of a federal agent. Morrison was quiet for almost a minute. Fine, $51,000, but this ends it. No more contact with your family, no more demands. Agreed. Where? The old textile warehouse on Industrial Boulevard. You know the one? I knew it. It was the same warehouse where Zane had been arrested 6 months earlier. When? 1 hour. Come alone, bring the money in a duffel bag, and Blake, if I see any cops, your kids die. I hung up and looked at Baines, who had been monitoring the call. We can't let you go in there alone. You heard him. If he sees police, he'll kill them. So what's your plan? I go in, give him the money, and bring my kids home. And if it's a trap, then you arrest him after he shoots me. The textile warehouse sat on the edge of town like a monument to industrial decay. Broken windows, rusted metal siding, and weeds growing through cracks in the parking lot. It was the perfect place for someone like Morrison to make a last stand. I parked my truck 50 yards from the main entrance and checked my weapon one final time. Baines had positioned tactical teams around the perimeter, but they had orders to stay hidden unless they heard gunshots. The duffel bag containing $51,000 felt heavier than it should as I walked toward the warehouse. Every step brought me closer to either rescuing my children or walking into a trap that would leave them orphaned. The main door was unlocked. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of abandoned machinery and storage containers. Shafts of sunlight streamed through broken skylights, creating an eerie pattern of light and shadow across the concrete floor. Blake, over here. Morrison's voice echoed from somewhere in the back of the building. I followed the sound, moving carefully between rusted conveyor belts and empty shipping pallets. I found him in what used to be the warehouse office, sitting behind a metal desk with Harper and Jude tied to chairs beside him. Both kids were conscious and appeared unharmed, but I could see the fear in their eyes. Dad, Jude called out when he saw me. It's okay, buddy. Everything's going to be fine. Morrison stood up, revealing a pistol in his right hand. You bring the money? I held up the duffel bag. $51,000, like we agreed. Throw it over here. I tossed the bag onto the desk. Morrison unzipped it and looked inside, but kept his gun pointed in my direction. Looks right. Now here's what's going to happen. I'm going to walk out of here with this money, and you're going to wait exactly 10 minutes before you untie your kids. That wasn't the deal. You release them first, then take the money. The deal just changed. Morrison moved closer to Harper and Jude, his gun now pointed directly at them. 10 minutes, Blake. If I see any cops before then, your children die. I realized he had no intention of honoring our agreement. He was going to take the money and kill us all to eliminate witnesses. Morrison, you got what you wanted. Let them go. What I wanted was $60,000. You're $9,000 short, so I'm keeping some collateral. That's when I noticed the smell. Gasoline. Morrison had doused the office area with accelerant, planning to burn the building down after he left. You're going to kill children over $9,000? I'm going to kill children because their mother cost me everything. Zane's in prison, my operation is destroyed, and I'm facing life in federal prison, all because your wife decided to cooperate with the cops. Erin did what she had to do to protect her family. Well, now I'm doing what I have to do to protect myself. Morrison raised his gun toward Harper, and I knew I was out of time. I dove to my left, drawing my weapon as I rolled behind a filing cabinet. Morrison's first shot went wide, punching a hole in the concrete wall behind where I'd been standing. Dad! Harper screamed. Stay down! I shouted back. Morrison fired 2 more shots at the filing cabinet, the bullets ringing off the metal like bells. I could hear him moving, trying to get a better angle. I popped up and returned fire, forcing him to take cover behind the desk where my kids were tied up. It was a tactical nightmare. I couldn't shoot at him without risking hitting Harper or Jude. You can't win this, Blake. I've got your kids, and I've got all the advantages. He was right about the tactical situation, but he'd made one critical mistake. He'd chosen the same warehouse where Zane had been arrested, which meant I knew the layout. I moved quickly to my right, using the abandoned machinery as cover. There was a maintenance ladder that led to a catwalk overlooking the office area. If I could get up there, I'd have a clear shot at Morrison without endangering the kids. Morrison fired again, this time at the sound of my movement. The bullet sparked off a piece of machinery inches from my head. You know what your problem is, Blake? You care too much. About your job, about your family, about doing the right thing. Me? I don't care about anything anymore. I reached the ladder and started climbing as quietly as possible. Morrison was still talking, which meant he hadn't spotted me yet. Your wife was just like you. Thought she could play both sides, keep everyone happy, but you can't serve two masters. Eventually you have to choose. From the catwalk, I could see the entire office area. Morrison was crouched behind the desk, using my children as human shields. Harper was trying to work her hands free from the rope, while Jude sat perfectly still, following the instructions I'd given him about staying calm in dangerous situations. I lined up my shot, aiming for Morrison's shoulder. I needed to disable him without killing him. Dead men couldn't tell us if they had accomplices or other threats planned. But before I could fire, Morrison stood up and pointed his gun directly at Harper's head. I know you're up there, Blake. Come down now, or your daughter dies. I had no choice. I holstered my weapon and climbed down from the catwalk. Smart man. Now kick your gun over here. I complied, sliding my pistol across the concrete floor until it stopped at Morrison's feet. You know what's funny? Morrison said, picking up my weapon. Your wife actually tried to pay me. Called me yesterday, offered to work out a payment plan, $50 a week until the debt was settled. $50 a week? That's what I said. 60 grand at 50 a week? That's 23 years. I told her I'd be dead or in prison long before then. Morrison was enjoying himself now, savoring his moment of complete control. But then I realized something. This was never about the money. This was about respect, about making sure people understand that you don't cross Jax Morrison without consequences. He moved away from the desk, keeping both guns trained on my family. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to shoot you first, Blake, then your kids. Then I'm going to burn this place down and disappear with the money. And then what? You'll be the most wanted man in America. Every cop in the country will be hunting you. Maybe, but I'll be rich and free, which is better than poor and in prison. Morrison raised his gun toward me, and I prepared to rush him. It was a suicide move, but it might give Harper and Jude a chance to escape. That's when the explosion happened. The blast came from somewhere near the front of the warehouse, a thunderous boom that shook the entire building. Morrison spun toward the sound, momentarily distracted. I didn't waste the opportunity. I lunged forward, tackling Morrison around the waist and driving him backward into the wall. His gun went off, the bullet embedding itself in the ceiling. We fought for control of the weapon, rolling across the concrete floor as more explosions echoed through the warehouse. I could hear tactical teams shouting commands and the sound of heavy boots on metal stairs. Morrison was stronger than I'd expected, but desperation gave me an edge. I managed to pin his gun hand against the floor and drive my knee into his ribs. He gasped and loosened his grip just enough for me to wrench the weapon away. Federal agents, drop your weapons. The tactical team burst into the office area just as I was getting to my feet. Morrison was on his back, gasping for air and clutching his ribs. Harper, Jude, are you okay? We're okay, Dad, Harper said, her voice shaking but strong. I cut them free from their chairs and pulled them into a hug that lasted forever and not nearly long enough. How did you find us? I asked Baines as his team secured Morrison. We didn't. Your ex-wife did. Erin? She's been tracking Morrison for the past 2 days, followed him here and called in our location. She's the one who set off those explosions, some kind of improvised flashbangs she made from road flares and industrial chemicals. I looked toward the warehouse entrance and saw Erin running toward us, her face streaked with tears and soot. Are they okay? Are the kids okay? They're fine, I said. Thanks to you. She dropped to her knees and pulled Harper and Jude into her own desperate hug. I'm so sorry, she whispered. This is all my fault. I should never have gotten involved with those people. It's over now, Harper said. We're all okay. Morrison was loaded into an ambulance with 2 broken ribs and a concussion. The $51,000 was recovered as evidence, though I knew I'd never see most of it again. As we walked out of the warehouse, Jude looked up at me with the serious expression he wore when he was trying to understand adult problems. Dad, is Mom going to live with us again now? I looked at Erin, who was holding Harper's hand and talking quietly with Detective Baines. No, buddy. Your mom and I are still getting divorced, but she's always going to be your mom, and she's always going to love you. Even though she made mistakes? Especially because she made mistakes. People who love you don't give up on you when you mess up. They help you fix things and do better next time. That evening, after the police interviews and medical examinations and news reports, I sat on my front porch with Harper and Jude, watching the sunset and trying to process everything that had happened. "Dad?" Harper said. "I'm proud of you." "Why's that?" "Because you saved us. And because you helped Mom even though she hurt you. Your mom saved you too. She's the one who found where Morrison was hiding. But you forgave her. That's harder than being brave." I thought about that as the last light faded from the sky. Forgiveness was harder than bravery. It required letting go of anger and hurt and the desire for revenge. It meant choosing to move forward instead of staying trapped in the past. 6 months later, our divorce was finalized. Erin and I shared custody of Harper and Jude, and she'd completed her probation without incident. Zane was serving his 15 years in federal prison. Morrison had been sentenced to life without parole for kidnapping. On the day the divorce became official, Erin and I met at a coffee shop to sign the final papers. "Any regrets?" she asked. "About the divorce?" "No. About how we handled everything else?" "Some." "I never thanked you properly. For protecting me during the investigation, for helping me avoid prison, for saving our children. You thanked me by risking your life to find them when they were taken. Harvey, do you think we could ever be friends again? Not married, but friends?" I considered the question. "Maybe, someday, for the kids' sake." "For the kids' sake," she agreed. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I realized that revenge had never been about destroying Erin or Zane or Morrison. Real revenge was building a better life from the wreckage they'd left behind. My children were safe and happy. My career was stronger than ever. And I'd learned that sometimes the best way to defeat your enemies is to refuse to let them turn you into someone you don't want to be. 6 weeks later, I received a letter from Zane Carter in federal prison. He wanted to apologize for the affair and for putting my family in danger. He asked for my forgiveness and offered to testify against Morrison if it would help with any additional charges. I read the letter twice, then threw it in the trash. Some people deserve forgiveness. Others just deserve to be forgotten.